Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. This is Gail of Gaia, and this is Free Range, where we graze on wild ideas and we have wonderful guests. And I'm so sorry that we had started a little later than we anticipated, but things happen and that's just the way it is. So I am so delighted and honored to have Dr. Robert O. Young on the show today. He's been on the show before, but not on this platform and not with the live chat questions. So I hope you come with questions. And as you know, he's got quite a heavy science background in um, biochemistry, naturopathic medicine, and I think he's got a couple other PhDs. But anyway, he's very special, and I'm so happy to have you on the show, Dr. Young.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Gail. You're a bright light and a precious soul to provide this platform, so people can learn and grow and connect to truth. So, thank you for being a beacon of light and a beacon of hope.
Well, I thank you. And that's why I'm so happy to have you on because you have exposed many things. And at some point, we'll move to the uncensored platforms. But I thought we could start out with talking a little bit about the toxic environment that we live in. I mean, we are being exposed to toxic things from what we eat, what we drink, what we um, what we breathe, and even what we think. And you always say that. And I love that
Hmm.
line because it's so true. It actually creates an acidic environment. And the alkaline environment is what we are supposed to exist in.
Hmm.
And would you explain a little bit about everybody has a misconception about digestion and acid in the stomach and that kind of thing. I think it might be beneficial because it really is a new biology. It's not what we were taught.
Well, it's very convenient to leave out in chemistry, particularly if you're trying to sell something like enzymes or probiotics or whatever you're trying to sell, to leave out, the full truth and nothing but the truth. But if you understand the biochemistry of the stomach, is that hydrochloric acid, HCl, which has a pH on a scale from 0 to 14 around 1 to 1.5. So
Wow.
it's highly caustic. And the reason I say that is because the pH scale is a logarithm to the power of 10. So when you're comparing hydrochloric acid to, say, the ideal pH of the blood, you have to look at you know the different logarithm going from 10 times to 100 times to 1,000 times to 10,000 times to 100,000 times to a million times. So when you're looking at the stomach pH versus
Wow.
the blood pH is a million times more alkaline than hydrochloric acid, which is a waste product of the chemistry which you should understand. This is basic chemistry. And the basic chemistry, I can give you the actual symbols, or I can give you the actual names. But when you take water, you take salt, and you add to that carbon dioxide, you make baking soda, sodium bicarbonate. And the byproduct of that is hydrochloric acid. So when you're looking at the full equation, and in biochemistry, things have to balance. The right side has to balance the left side. Okay. So when you're looking at how does the body produce baking soda and where is it produced? It's produced in the stomach.
Yeah. That's,
Okay. So people say, wow, I didn't know that. That's because you weren't told that,
yeah.
or you didn't catch that because the emphasis went from the stomach produces sodium bicarbonate, which is NaHCO3. So if you look at H2O, CO2, okay, plus CO2, so you got carbon dioxide, you have water H2O, and you have salt NaCl. That equals, on the other side of the equation, NaHCO3 plus HCl. So for every molecule that's created in the stomach, so every molecule that's created in the stomach uh, of hydrochloric acid, an equal amount of sodium bicarbonate is produced, to the extreme, the fact, in order for the body to balance the ideal pH, let's say, of the blood at 7.365 to 7.4, or the interstitial fluid, which are balanced at 8.3 to 8.4, much like the ocean, okay, to balancing the intracellular fluids, which are inside the cell at 7.4. The stomach is doing all that for you. And if you then go to try to understand, let's say, why do I get an upset stomach?
Yeah.
Why do, after I overexercise, have pain in my muscles from lactic acid buildup, from metabolism? And what does the stomach have to do with that? What does the stomach have to do with balancing and maintaining the alkaline design of all the body fluids? And this is where the new biology comes in. The new biology states two premises. The human body is alkaline in its design, although acidic by its function. So when you're talking, when you're thinking, when you're moving your body, you're producing lactic acid and citric acid. They leave that one out, but you're producing those two acids. Those are the two main acids that cause all sickness and disease. And it's the stomach's responsibility to maintain those delicate pH balances. And so when the body needs more alkalinity in the blood or interstitial fluid, because you're over exercising, or you've just been running a marathon and you're at the 22-mile mark, or the 20, and you have what happened is called I hit the wall, okay? And you're wondering why people are along the sidelines literally throwing up whatever's in their stomach. It's because the stomach can't keep up with the alkaline design to produce. It needs salt, water, not Gatorade, salt, water, and carbon dioxide in order to produce sodium bicarbonate. And to do that, and to keep up with it, while it's producing that, to neutralize the lactic acid or the citric acid via metabolism, via exercise, via from the foods or whatever, you end up with a belly full of hydrochloric acid. And that hydrochloric acid is the waste product of sodium bicarbonate production. And the next question is where does it go? Because of its molecular weight, it falls into what is called the gastric pits, to be removed, okay, out of the body through the lymphatic system. So the body gets rid of it, and it tries to get rid of it gradually. That's why you have inflammation for a while, and then it dissipates. Because a lot of this acid, when it's in the interstitial fluids which surround all the cells, and it's being spewed out via metabolism by the cell, the body has to put it somewhere. So it compartmentalizes it into the largest organ of the body, which is called the interstitium. And this particular organ has fluid in it, fluid called the interstitial fluid. And if it doesn't get eliminated out through the pores of the skin, through sweat, or through urination, it gets parked into the fatty tissues. It gets parked first into the muscle and then into the fatty tissue. So the first line of defense to protect the alkaline design, it is the stomach's responsibility to manage and maintain that. So when you eat food, the stomach begins producing baking soda to neutralize the acids of the food. So if you're drinking a cup of coffee, which has a pH of 5.5, well, that's not a correct pH. The body has to deal with the acids or the toxins of that food. So the stomach does that by producing baking soda. Where does it get its salt, water, and carbon dioxide? From the blood. 90% of CO2 comes from the blood. The other 10% is exhaled through, respiration. So this is the process. So the stomach is the major organ for managing and maintaining the alkaline design of the body fluids, all of them. Blood fluids, which are vascular, interstitium fluids, which are the interstitial fluids that surround all the cells, and also intracellular fluids. These are the three main fluids. And interstitium makes up about 20 liters of that body fluid. So it's a large amount of fluid that the body maintains. So the stomach's main purpose is not to digest food.
Now, that's just not what most people think.
Well, that's why they eat whatever they eat, and the stomach has to deal with it. It gets rid of it. That's why we have solid eliminations, because that's food that wasn't converted into stem cells, which doesn't take place in the bone marrow. Stem cells are produced in the crypts of the small intestine. That's why I discourage overacidification with enzymes or probiotics, which are bacterial forms of no value coming from either animal, plant, or human matter that the body has to get rid of. It doesn't go into producing, the actual stem cell, or what is called the erythroblast, that then becomes our new blood. And most people don't understand this, but the most important cell in the human body is the red blood cell, not the white blood cell, the red blood cell. The red blood cell, which is a non-nucleated cell, differentiates, which means it can change into muscle, into bone, into heart, into brain, into connective tissue. It is the blood that becomes all body cells, and blood is made not in the marrow of the bones, only if you're starving to death. That's why it's found there. Or if you're in a deficiency, and the deficiency is the body's inability to produce 5 million red blood cells per second.
Wow.
Per second. And your stomach, of course, what you're eating, but your intestines not keeping up with that liquefied, which is called chyme, that liquefied alkaline food at a pH of 8.4, which is the ideal pH of the small intestine.
8.4?
So, 8.4.
Wow. Because I
every time you take a probiotic, every time you take an enzyme, every time you take a cup of coffee, every time you drink alcohol, you alter the delicate pH balance of that environment, causing the stomach to react to that. It's not the white blood cells that react to this.
Wow.
The white blood cells is way down the list of a long lines of activated processes that the body goes through. But on the front line, it is the stomach's responsibility to produce the sodium or potassium bicarbonates to maintain the alkaline design. And if something has been introduced through the air, air pollution, through our thoughts, which is stinking thinking, over acidity, lactic acid buildup from overexercise, eating beef, chicken, pork, or fish, which is nitric acid or uric acid or sulfuric or phosphoric acids, it takes a tremendous amount of effort for the body to neutralize those poisons. And the body has to take anywhere from 2 to 3 times more alkalinity to get rid of the poisons from fish, the poisons from beef, the poisons from chicken, the poisons from egg.
When you're talking about poisons, are you referring to contamination, or are you referring to the protein level?
I'm referring to the breakdown products of the body, because the body cannot use any solid food. All food, in order to be transformed, has to be in a liquid state found in the crypts of the small intestine at a pH of 8.4 to make a healthy erythroblast, which then makes the erythrocyte, which then travels through the vascular system into the capillary system to become the new body cell. Blood is the primary element. You are a product of your blood. So if you have wrinkles, if you have spots, if you have imperfections, if you have scars, this is an imperfection in the environment and your inability to produce healthy blood. And this is the number one problem in the world today. And it exists in 99.9% of the people, because people have no idea how their body works.
That's
People
true.
do not understand how to manage and maintain their physicality. And that affects the emotionality. And that affects the spirituality of that, because we live in a physical body, even though we're inhabited by a spiritual form. But that spiritual form, regardless, is literally hampered down or smothered by your perversions.
Wow.
Now, I'm not trying to be critical of anyone here, because when I speak, I also speak to myself and remind myself how it is important to eat a clean diet.
That's
And
difficult to do in these days.
it is, because we've been programmed to believe in the multiplicity of lies that are perpetuated by all the different aspects of corporate America, corporate
Yes.
world, and what have you.
Yes.
If it tastes good, it must be good. No, that's not necessarily correct. When you gain a taste for avocado,
I
and
love
give up your
avocados.
eggs, which the purpose of an egg is to produce a baby chick, then you stop. That's one of my top 10 foods never to eat. But you begin to clean up the perversion of your polluted environments that you're doing to yourself. So you can tell me what you eat, and I can tell you exactly what your symptoms are and the diseases that you will have. If you don't have them now, you will have them.
People just don't want to believe that. I've worked as a nutritionist, and people are very defensive of their diet. I've always said everybody's an expert on food to eat, but they're really not.
Well, they ought to look at the word. What does the word have in diet that stands right out to you? Die.
Die. Oh, yeah. Oh my God. You're absolutely right.
This is not a live it, it's a diet. The
Mhm.
diets that are being promulgated by both the right and left side, depending on which side you're on, both those who are promoting a vegan diet or vegetarian diet, these are diets, not live its.
I haven't heard this one before. That's good. I like it.
So the problem is they'll say, well, it's okay to eat mushrooms because mushrooms support the immune system. Read any study on mushrooms, and what does it do? It activates the alarming situation and the release of reduced oxygen, reduced hydrogen, and active neutrophil activity, as if that's a good thing. No, all you've proven by eating mushrooms is you just poisoned yourself. And you can
Wow.
do
'Cause
that
they
with
say that
eggs. You can do it with mushrooms. You can do it with peanuts. You can do it with chicken. You can do it with alcohol. You can do it with vinegar. I don't care if it comes from an apple source or if it comes from rice, a grain source. Vinegar is the urine of fermentation. And any waste product from fermentation, and that's a big thing, so yogurt is fermented, they
sauerkraut.
have many of these drinks out there that are fermented.
Yeah.
These are poisons to
Kombucha.
the environment.
And that's
And
just
it
the
can be
opposite
proven.
of what everybody thinks.
Well,
Yeah.
here again, when you understand the basic premise of anatomy and physiology, the premise is this: that in perfect health, that's pH, perfect health, you are managing and maintaining the alkaline design of the body fluids, because the body cells that make up your organs and glands and tissues are only as healthy as the water they're bathed in. No different than the fish in the ocean are only as healthy as the water they swim in. And whatever they suffer from, whether it's increase of acid rain or increase of carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide, and we know how that can kill. It can kill you in 3 to 4 minutes if it builds up. It's called hypercapnia. The body has to get rid of it. If it can't get rid of it, you go into oxygen deprivation, you go into pathological blood coagulation, and you end up dying. from that. And that, of course, is the activator of that is exactly what's in the inoculation. The jab contains poisons that cause the hypercapnia, the pathological blood coagulation, and the oxygen deprivation that leads to death. That's why athletes, when they're working, over 1,000 of them have just dropped over dead.
Yeah.
And we take the number one world player in the world, Novak. He said, "I'm not doing that." And you take the number one player, the second world player, who took the jab, and he's literally resigning himself, quitting because he's got heart pain.
Yeah, we know about all that. And I just before we're going to switch to the uncensored platforms here very shortly. But I think one of the things that came up, and I put it up on the screen, it says, "What are we to eat? What can we eat that's clean and pristine and will help us maintain the alkalinity of the body?"
Well, that was established over 7,000 years ago in the Book of Creation. It was also established in the Dead Sea Scrolls, called the Humble Peace, when Jesus taught the Essenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm familiar
and
with
it, and it, and it's called grass, not the stuff you smoke, the stuff you drink. You drink it, you eat it. These are the things. In fact, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, when Jesus was teaching the Essenes about what would bring them eternal life and a continuation of their life, both in quality and quantity, it was actually drinking and eating all those foods that were high in chlorophyll. And that was the same advice that was given over 7,000 years ago to the first man, Adam, and to the first woman, Eve, okay, that all green foods shall be for your meat. So the color has to change. It's not red, it's not yellow, it's not brown, it's not black, it's green. Green contains a molecule. That molecule is chlorophyll. That chlorophyll molecule is identical to hemoglobin other than the center atom. And if you've ever read into my research about nuclear transformation and understand how atoms can actually literally alter. So, for example, where you have, let's say, sodium, which contains 11 protons in its nucleus, if it adds one proton from hydrogen, it becomes magnesium. And this is what happens to plants when you start analyzing the mineral content and the nuclear transformation, which is a science I developed over 30 years ago, that elements can alter their or change depending on what the body needs. So sodium is so prevalent because it's at the pinnacle of the pyramid, which is not a table. It's literally an inverted pyramid that goes out, where sodium and the precursor of sodium, which is lithium and oxygen, literally gives birth to all other elements. So magnesium, potassium, calcium are all nuclear transformations of sodium. This is why the ocean needs sodium. This is why our body needs sodium. And yet we have an educational system that has suggested that sodium is not good and has been associated with heart disease. No, this is not correct. The body uses sodium to produce alkalizing compounds to bind the acids that are causing the coagulation of the blood by what we eat, what we drink, what we breathe, even what we inoculate. And then we have one that's been now introduced in the 1918 pandemic, which was the Spanish flu pandemic. And we've had pandemic after pandemic after pandemic after pandemic, and it's nothing more than systemic poisoning. Even with polio, which is caused by a chemical called DDT. Once it was eliminated, all those symptoms went away because there is no polio virus. And I actually have the letter from the CDC stating that they have no purified isolation of polio. They have no purified isolation of Ebola. They have no purified isolation of SARS, COVID, Corona, whatever you want to call it.
Smallpox. Smallpox.
Smallpox, cowpox. These are
Any
all,
of the pox.
this whole viral community is based upon theory and scientism or political science, depending on what the outcome is.
That's
So
true.
we're back to the basics of this is what poison is making you sick. So if you have gout, what's the poison? Do you want to take a guess?
Meat.
Uric acid.
Uric acid. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to get down to what the poison is.
The poison itself. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So if you have cancer, what's the poison? There's two of them, major ones. Lactic acid and citric acid.
Citrus. Yeah, okay. I'm not thinking.
And yet people are doing injections of vitamin C. That's okay if you've got congestion of the bowel. You can do a little bit of that, but to inject it in the blood compromises that delicate pH balance. And yes, it may break down something, but it ends up killing you.
Okay, somebody's asking here. Let me put this in there. We might have to, I don't know if we should change to the uncensored platforms here very shortly so we can speak freely about everything, especially inoculations and so on. But is it safe to take baking soda and water on a daily basis?
That's what the folks, the good folks in 1918 during the Spanish flu pandemic, they took 1 teaspoon, and I have this in writing because Arm & Hammer was providing a baking soda. People were putting 1 teaspoon in 4 ounces of distilled or alkaline or purified water, whatever that was at that time, and they were doing that 3 times a day to prevent the symptoms associated with the inoculation and radio waves. Wow. What happened in 1918 is just more advanced to what is happening in 2020, 2021, and now 2022.
Okay, I'm going to switch us to the uncensored platforms. So please put those in the chat again so everybody can see them. And then we can not worry about what we say. I just don't trust some of these platforms. So let's see okay. I'm going to take off Twitter. I'm going to take off Facebook.